Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here, and welcome to another review. And now we're taking a look at the Super Nintendo Entertainment System version of the classic puzzle game Lemmings. Now, I've already reviewed the Amiga version, which is another 16-bit version of, and I believe was the original, and it was and still is a cast iron classic. There you can have 1 and 2 player games just like in the Amiga version, and there's also a password system. But one thing that's kind of irritating and a bit cheesy and laughable, at least in hindsight, is that there are no vowels in this particular version. My understanding is that they did that so that people to coincide with Nintendo of America's family-friendly policies to stop people from keying in swear words. The Japanese version of this, even on the Super Famicom, as the Super Nintendo is called over there, does actually have the vowels fully intact. I wasn't trying to key in a code there, but so let's have a one-player go and see how the. There you get the usual intro screen, but unlike the Amiga version, though, you don't get a preview of the. You don't get a preview of the level at the top of the screen, so it's not until you've actually gone into the level that you actually know what's happening. Now, one thing that kind of irritates about this is that you'd expect the B button to be the main button for selection, but it's not, it's A. Which does take some getting used to, because normally the most commonly used button for any game is the B button, because that's the lowest of the 4 main buttons on the right of a Super Nintendo controller. You can use the Y button to go to cycle left across the skills, and X to cycle right. Or you can just move the pointer to them and press A again. A bit like you would if you're playing a mouse version. Which brings me on to another problem I have with this particular version. This, from what I can make out, came out before Mario Paint on the Super Nintendo, and one of the only real reasons that magazines of the time gave for even considering Mario Paint is the mouse that came with it. Unfortunately, because Lemmings reportedly came out before that, it couldn't be programmed to cater for that. There's also the screen resolution is noticeably lower in this than it is on the Amiga version. So you can't see as much on-screen detail as you can in the Amiga version. I know another change they made is they put the plus and minus release rate on the same button. On the Amiga original, there was a separate button for minus and a separate button for plus. There's also no pause button, because on this you can just press the start button on the controller. Apart from that, I was actually playing this on Friday just gone, which was the 26th of March 2021, and I noticed that by and large the levels seemed to be the same as the Amiga version. In fact, I even got to see the level entitled "A Beast of a Level," which used graphics and music from Shadow of the Beast. The original Amiga version does actually contain 4 levels across the 4 difficulty settings: fun, tricky, taxing, and mayhem. One in each one, which references a game that Psygnosis had previously released. In the case of a Beast of a Level, it was Shadow of a Beast. There's also a level on Tricky called Menacing, which uses music and visuals from a game called Menace. And there's also a level called An Awesome Level, which is in the Taxing, which uses music and and graphics from a game called Awesome, and also a Beast 2 of a level in the Mayhem difficulty, which, as you probably guessed, uses music and sound, music and graphics from Shadow of the Beast 2. All four of those games were previous Psygnosis releases. And another thing I've noticed is that the frame rate noticeably drops with fewer Lemmings on screen compared to the Amiga version. It wasn't until you got past about 80 to 85 Lemmings on screen at the same time that you saw a frame rate drop. But in this Super Nintendo version, it's not as the threshold isn't as high as that, which is a bit of a pain because it can potentially make later levels as well, where the time limits can be quite tight, a bit of a pain in the arse. And you can still double click on the Armageddon, either to do like I do to get rid of these blockers because I haven't got any bombers to use on them, or it's also handy if you've made a complete pig's ear of a level and need to do it all over again. Yeah, the passcodes also aren't quite as long as in the Amiga original either. The music and speech samples aren't quite as good as in the Amiga version. I mean, that Let's Go, it was there, but it was noticeably lower in pitch and it was a bit muffled. And when I was playing it on that aforementioned Friday, there was some other things I noticed. As I've said in previous Super Nintendo and Nintendo and Nintendo Entertainment System reviews previously, at the time, Nintendo of America had some strict family-friendly policies about what they would and wouldn't allow in American releases of games, and unfortunately, the versions released here in Europe tended to be PAL versions of those same North America releases, and as a result we suffered the same censorship problems as they did. And in the case of Lemmings, references to heaven, hell, demons and the like were completely removed and or replaced with something else. I mean there's a level that would normally have had the word heaven and an arrow pointing to the right, but the word's been changed to paradise. In fact, there are two levels in the game, at least, that use that, and one of them actually was originally called Heaven Can Wait, We Hope, but in the Nintendo of America snipped version, it was renamed to Paradise Can Wait, which unfortunately loses a somewhat classic reference, which it was and there's also a level called All the Sixes, and originally that had three background graphics in the shape of 3 sixes, and 666 is a somewhat beastly number that went against Nintendo of America's then active family-friendly policies, so that got changed completely, and so did the name of the level. And I believe all this, from what I understand, all the anything referencing the sixes in that level was changed to 2s. And another thing, some graphics in some levels were originally contained gravestones in the shape of crosses because they didn't allow religious imagery either. Those crosses were changed into those cross-shaped gravestones were changed into something totally unrelated that didn't look anything like a cross. And there's also a similar cross in Beast 2 of a level that got changed to just a couple of plain blocks of wood that no longer resembled the gravestone in the shape of a cross. God, the music really doesn't sound as crisp as it does in the Amiga version, does it? It doesn't have the same jauntiness and bounciness to it. It's a shame, because I know that the Super Nintendo can do some great music. I've heard it before. But not being able to play this with a mouse is a bit of a pig, because it means that quick actions are a bit of a royal pain in the bum. So I'm doing that to fix it in place to make it easier to time the bomber. There is a later level in which you don't get the chance to use blockers, so you have to predict when to start the bomber action as the lemming walks towards it, and hope that it's close enough to the wall to blast a hole in the side of it. See, look, this is already starting to look noticeably slower, and there's not. See, it has slowed down a little bit. Well, it's fun. Another thing, it's funny how references to heaven and hell are a bit of a problem, or at the very least were at the time of this game coming out for Nintendo of America. Yet there was that very demon-like exit door in that level we've just finished, and that was completely untainted. I mean, I'm not going to take as long on this, because allowing for the Nintendo of America forced changes, it's pretty much the same as the Amiga version I've reviewed. So, if you want to know a bit more about the game's mechanics, then just have a gander at that, and that way I'm not having to repeat myself. Yeah, it is noticeably slower. I can even tell by the difference between between the sound of the last three planks of a builder being laid before it stops building. Is noticeably smaller gap compared to the Amiga version, which I was actually playing over the weekend as well. So, do I hate the Super Nintendo version of Lemmings? No, it's not. It's far from a disaster. I mean, admittedly, the censorship courtesy of Nintendo of America is a bit of a shame, and it does mean that some things are a bit cheesy and in some cases laughable, like the removal of the vowels in the password section. This is not at all the only game affected by that problem. They did later renege on that, and we did. I mean, for example, in Super: The Empire Strikes Back, I seem to recall that they did allow vowels in certain aspects of that. I mean, in some cases, they didn't even allow vowels when you're asked to key in your name, which made it even more fun, because most people's names, at least anglicised names, have vowels in them. So entering their name was pretty much impossible without vowels. And it is a shame that you don't get a little preview at the top of that explanatory screen that you just left, saying what you're about to be asked to do in the level. So no, I don't altogether hate this game. I just think that even allowing for the Nintendo of America censorship, it could have been a bit better than it ultimately was. It really needed to have better music samples. And as I said, it's not quite as fast as the Amiga version, particularly when there are about 40 to 50 lemmings on the screen at once, as evidenced by the gap between the builder's last 3 blocks being laid, which I noticed is more spaced out than in the Amiga version, which further shows the noticeable difference in speed. Whether or not that's a problem with me being in a PAL region is currently unclear, but the Amiga version of Lemmings I was played was a PAL region version, and it still ran faster, so it's a bit unclear. It still has the same problems that when you've got a whole clump of lemmings, it can be hard to get a particular precision move working in the way you wanted, such as trying to build or bash in the correct direction, because when it's all in a clump, it's by sheer luck if you manage to activate it on a lemming that's facing in the direction you want to build, bash, mine, etc. I mean, as I was saying, don't be fooled by the fact that these levels that you've seen me play now are quite easy. This is only the first set of levels, so they will be easy. They do get more mean later on. I mean, you can get very close to the end and then blow the whole thing simply because you didn't manage to turn a lemming into a bash when it was facing in the correct direction, because your timing was just a little off. I mean, the controls were responsive enough. It's just that this was just crying to be used with a mouse and not a joypad. You just can't move the pointer around as quickly with a joypad as you can with a mouse. And I paused it there. Oh, no, damn it. See what I mean? The pointer doesn't move particularly fast, so it's quite hard to get them to go. So it's quite hard to get them to go in them. It's hard to select an option and then quickly move to the lemming that you wanted to change. Oh, God. Yeah. But this is just a review and not a serious game, so... So I'm not overly concerned about whether or not I do well, because this is just a review after all. So regardless of what happens, I am going to finish the review here once this level's completed, success or fail. So that's Lemmings for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. A little bit of a close but no cigar opinion in this case. Graphics are fine, animation's fine. It still uses the same classic animation from the Amiga original. As I said, I believe the Amiga is the original version, and other versions were as close to that as was possible on the 8 and 16-bit machines it was converted to at the time. I mean, even the Sinclair ZX Spectrum and the Amstrad CPC got versions of Lemmings. And as you probably guessed, in the Spectrum version, they had to make some adjustments to get around that machine's attribute limitations. And of course, the fact that it's an 8-bit, so music wouldn't sound as good as it could potentially in a 16-bit version. But I can't really fault the visuals; they're fine in this version, and I expected them to be fine. Sound, well, as I said, the quality of the sound samples and musical instrument samples in this is a little bit on the disappointing side. They're not awful, but they're a little bit tinny and muffled at times compared to the brightness and jauntiness of those in the Amiga version. So they don't quite perk you up the way they do in that version. I mean, it's still got the same recognisable music. They just don't sound as good because of the disappointing quality instrument samples. Gameplay. Well, it is a shame that this game seems to come out before Mario Paint did, so there was no mouse for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System at the time. It wasn't until Mario Paint came out that the system actually got a mouse, and you could later get the mouse by itself if you didn't particularly want to pay for Mario Paint as well, which did get rather mixed reviews, so I would understand if people only bought the mouse by itself. But trying to play this with a controller is a bit too fiddly. And the fact that selecting an action is not the B button like you might expect, it's A. I mean, luckily, you can still select options via the Y and X while the game's paused, but you might have to do that more frequently than you might have done in the Amiga version, or indeed any computer mouse-controlled version by comparison, to get around that little niggle. It doesn't necessarily make a level any easier. It just makes it a bit more bearable. So all in all, it's a good version. It's just I think the Amiga version is generally better, and it just has a jauntier feel to it, which this just slightly lacks. And there's also the fact that the Amiga version doesn't have the same Nintendo of America censorship policies that this version does. So there's none of that missing vowels and references to heaven being changed to paradise and the other things I described earlier. So I'm going to give... And there's also the problem that Lemmings on the Super Nintendo cost £39.99 to £44.99 at the time of its initial release back in the 1990s. When you consider that the Amiga version is arguably superior and would have cost £24 or £25.99, then you can understand why people having to pay about £15 to £20 more for a slightly inferior version would feel a bit disappointed and hurt. So I'm going to give Lemmings on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System 7 out of 10. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope to catch you on another video soon. Texie88 out.